The first thing Elias Rowe noticed about the station was the silence. Not the absence of sound. Kepri Station was never truly quiet, but the kind of silence that came from people holding their breath. Conversations were hushed. Footsteps were careful. Even the low hum of the station's gravity rings felt subdued, as though the metal itself knew better than to draw attention. Elias had been warned, of course. Everyone who accepted a civilian contract on Kepri was warned. Do not offend the Nhrai. The Nhrai were not hostile. They were not aggressive. They were, by all official accounts, one of the most diplomatically stable species the interstellar compact had ever encountered. But they were also incomprehensible. They communicated with extreme precision. Their culture valued restraint, formality, and emotional opacity. Missteps, especially from humans, had, in the past, resulted in frozen negotiations, recalled ambassadors, and once, memorably, a 3-year trade embargo sparked by an inappropriately enthusiastic handshake. So Elias kept his head down as he moved through the main concourse, contract chip warm in his pocket. He was here as a systems archivist. Temporary, low profile, replaceable. Exactly how he liked it. That plan lasted approximately 6 hours. The incident occurred in Observation Hall 7. Elias had been assigned to audit a data lattice overlooking the diplomatic tier, a quiet, elegant space filled with curved glass and soft bioluminescent panels. Nhrai architecture favored organic lines. Nothing sharp, nothing aggressive. Even the seating seemed designed to suggest patience. He was halfway through rerouting a corrupted memory strand when he noticed her. She stood near the central viewport, gazing out at the amber swirl of the gas giant Kepri orbited. She was taller than most humans, her posture flawless. Her skin, or what passed for it, was a smooth, pearlescent indigo, catching the ambient light in subtle gradients. Delicate filaments traced her temples and jawline, faintly glowing in patterns Elias had no frame of reference for. He recognized her instantly, though he'd only seen images. Valeth of the Nhrai, cultural attaché, senior diplomatic observer, one of the most influential non-compact figures on the station, and someone he was absolutely not supposed to speak to. Elias reminded himself of that as he returned to his work. Unfortunately, his curiosity had always been stronger than his caution. Valeth turned from the viewport, her gaze settling on him. Her eyes were faceted, like polished crystal, reflecting light in ways that made it difficult to tell exactly where she was looking, except Elias felt, with unsettling certainty, that it was directly at him. She approached without a sound. "Human," she said, her voice resonant and melodic, filtered through the station's universal translator. "You are modifying the lattice." "Yes," Elias replied automatically, then winced at the bluntness. "I mean, yes, attaché, Valeth. Routine audit. I'll be finished shortly." She studied him in silence. Up close, the filaments along her skin shifted, pulsing faintly. "You have altered the access path," she said. "There was a redundancy loop," Elias explained. "It was inefficient." Another pause. Elias's pulse ticked upward. Nhrai pauses were notorious, sometimes contemplative, sometimes condemning. "Efficiency is a human priority," Valeth said at last. "It's kind of our thing," Elias replied, then immediately regretted it. Her filaments flared, just slightly. Elias braced himself for a diplomatic incident. Instead, Valeth inclined her head. "Your correction has improved the lattice's stability. That is acceptable." Relief washed through him. "Glad to hear it." Silence fell again, heavier this time. Valeth remained where she was, watching him as he packed up his tools. Elias could have left. Should have left. But something about the way the ambient light traced the curve of her features caught his attention. The elegance. the calm presence that seemed to anchor the space around her. Before his brain could catch up with his mouth, he spoke. "The light suits you," Elias said. "It brings out the patterns along your filaments. They're beautiful." The word hung in the air. Every sound in observation Hall 7 seemed to stop. Valeth froze. Her filaments flared brilliant white, then flushed deep violet. The glow spread across her skin in rippling waves, patterns Elias had never seen in any recording. Station security drones swiveled in unison. Across the hall, two compact diplomats turned, their faces draining of color. Elias's stomach dropped. "You absolute idiot," he thought. "You complimented her. You complimented an Harai attaché." "Attaché Valeth," Elias said quickly. "I apologize if that was." She raised one slender, three-fingered hand. "Silence," Valeth said. Her voice was no longer melodic. It resonated, layered with harmonics that vibrated through the floor. The filaments along her body blazed, shifting through colors in rapid succession. Violet. Gold. White again. Elias felt a sudden, inexplicable pressure in his chest, as though the air itself had thickened. This is highly irregular," muttered one of the compact diplomats, backing away. Valeth's gaze never left Elias. "You have made a declaration," she said. Elias blinked. I really didn't mean." "A declaration of aesthetic recognition," Valeth continued. "Public. Unfiltered. Directed." The drones hovered closer. Elias swallowed. "I was just trying to be kind." The word kind seemed to ripple through her, the filaments dimming slightly. "For my people," Valeth said slowly, "to comment upon another's form is not casual. It is not polite. It is an act bound by ritual, consequence, and vulnerability." The hall was utterly silent now. Elias's mouth was dry. "I didn't know." "I know," Valeth replied. Her filaments shifted again, settling into a steady, luminous pattern Elias somehow sensed was controlled. "In Harai culture," she continued, "to be seen and named as beautiful is to be acknowledged in one's totality. Mind, presence, purpose." She took a step closer. "You have done this without armor," she said. "Without ceremony. Without expectation of return." The pressure in the air eased. "And that," Valeth said, "is what shocks us." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. One of the diplomats whispered. He offered a bare compliment. "No leverage." Elias stared at Valeth. "I didn't want anything," he said quietly. "I just noticed." For a long moment she studied him. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, Valeth smiled. It was subtle, the slightest lift at the corners of her mouth, but the effect was electric. Her filaments glowed a warm, steady gold. "Human Elias Rowe," she said, "your words have initiated a response." The drones powered down. The diplomats looked like they might faint. "A response?" Elias echoed. "Yes," Valeth said. "It is customary that such recognition be answered." She inclined her head again, lower this time. Respectful. "I see you," she said. The words struck Elias with unexpected force. Not through translation, but meaning. Intention. Valeth turned, her filaments slowly dimming as she departed the hall. Conversation erupted the moment she was gone. "What did you do?" someone hissed at Elias. "I think," said another, "you just rewrote first contact etiquette." Within hours, the story spread across Kepri Station. A human civilian had complimented an Harai attaché, and she had not only accepted it, but reciprocated. The Compact Council convened an emergency session. The Harai delegation requested a private audience with Elias Rowe. Elias spent the night staring at his quarter's ceiling, wondering if he was about to become a historical footnote or a diplomatic disaster. The following day, he was escorted, very politely, very carefully, to the Nharai diplomatic enclave. Valeth awaited him in a chamber suffused with soft, bioluminescent light. The air felt warmer here, richer. "You are afraid," she observed. "Trying not to be," Elias admitted. "That is sufficient," Valeth said. She gestured for him to sit. He did, perching awkwardly on an organic-looking bench. "You spoke without calculation," she said. "Among my people, that is rare. Among yours, it is common." "Sometimes to our detriment," Elias said. Her filaments shimmered faintly. "And yet, your words carried no demand, no expectation. This confounds our models." Elias frowned. "Models? We assumed human expressions of admiration were transactional," Valeth said. "A prelude to desire, influence, possession." She met his eyes. "You desired nothing." "I just thought you deserved to know," Elias said. Silence stretched between them, not tense this time, but thoughtful. "Your simplicity is not simple," Valeth said at last. "It is brave." Elias chuckled softly. "Most days it's just me not thinking things through." Valeth's smile returned, brighter now. "In the wake of your declaration," she said, "my people have debated for an entire cycle. Some believe you violated sacred boundaries. Others believe you reminded us of something long neglected." "What's that?" Elias asked. "To be seen without armor," Valeth replied. She rose, her filaments glowing warmly. "We have decided to accept your compliment as it was intended." Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "And," she continued, "to extend an invitation." "An invitation?" "To dialogue," Valeth said. "Not as negotiators, not as symbols, but as individuals." Elias smiled, slow and genuine. "I'd like that." In the weeks that followed, Kepri Station changed. Humans and Nharai began speaking more freely, not recklessly, but honestly. Compliments were still rare, still handled with care, but the idea that kindness could exist without motive took root. Elias remained an archivist. Valeth remained an attaché. But sometimes, in Observation Hall 7, they stood together at the viewport, watching the gas giant churn below. One day, Valeth turned to him and said, "The way you listen, it is beautiful." This time, Elias was ready. "Thank you," he said. "I see you too." And across the station, among humans and aliens alike, the idea spread, quietly, steadily, that a single unguarded moment could change everything. The repercussions of that single moment did not fade with time. They deepened. Months passed, marked not by ceremonies or declarations, but by subtle shifts in how the station breathed. Kepri Station had always functioned efficiently, but now it felt alive. Conversations lingered. Shared spaces grew warmer. Where once there had been careful distance, there was now curiosity. The Compact's analysts struggled to quantify it. Their reports spoke of unexpected cultural permeability and non-hierarchical emotional exchanges. Trade agreements accelerated. Conflicts de-escalated before reaching arbitration. Even species that had historically mirrored the Nharai's emotional reserve began loosening their rigid protocols. And at the quiet center of it all stood Elias Rowe, still an archivist, still filing reports no one else wanted to touch. He never sought attention. In fact, he avoided it. But attention had a way of finding him. The request arrived on a standard cycle morning. A private summons, sealed with Nharai sigils. Elias stared at the message longer than necessary, a familiar knot forming in his chest. When he entered the diplomatic enclave this time, there were no guards. Only Valeth. She stood beneath a living arch of soft light, her filaments arranged in a pattern Elias now recognized as ceremonial, not rigid, but deliberate. "You have been summoned," she said, "not as a human representative." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That's new." "Nor as a civilian asset," she continued, "but as yourself." That unsettled him more than any formal charge could have. They walked together through a corridor Elias had never been permitted to enter before. The walls shimmered with slow-moving patterns, records, memories, histories encoded in light. "This is our continuance hall," Valeth explained. "Here, we preserve moments that altered our trajectory as a people." Elias stopped walking. "You don't mean—" Valeth turned to face him. Her filaments glowed softly, a calm, steady hue. "You are here," she said, "because the council has voted to include your declaration." Elias laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "You're archiving a compliment?" "We are archiving a disruption," Valeth corrected gently. "One that revealed an assumption we did not know we were making." She gestured, and the light before them shifted. A recorded image appeared. Observation Hall 7. Elias, nervous and distracted. Valeth, standing at the viewport. The moment played out exactly as it had. His words, her stillness, the flare of color. Elias watched himself on the recording, mortified all over again. "When we first encountered humanity," Valeth said, "we believed your emotional transparency was immaturity, a lack of discipline." She glanced at him. "We were wrong." The image faded, replaced by others. Nharai delegates speaking more openly. Humans listening more carefully. Small, unremarkable moments that together formed something vast. "Your people express admiration as a bridge," Valeth continued. "Ours learn to treat it as a weapon or a risk." She met his eyes fully now. "You reminded us it can be neither." Elias swallowed. "I didn't set out to change anything." "That," Valeth said, "is precisely why you did." There was a pause, comfortable, familiar. Valeth stepped closer, lowering her voice. "There is one more matter." "Of course," Elias said. "In Nharai tradition," she said, "when an individual alters the course of collective understanding, they are offered a choice." Elias's stomach tightened. "I'm listening." "You made a part," Valeth said. "Return to anonymity. Your influence will persist without you." She lifted one hand, filaments brightening. "Or," she said, "you may remain as a cultural constant. A reminder that connection does not require strategy." Elias looked around the hall of living memory. At the light. At her. "Would that make me something official?" he asked. Valeth smiled, not formally, not diplomatically, but warmly. "It would make you present." Elias exhaled slowly. "I think," he said, "I've always been better at staying than leaving." The decision rippled outward. In time, Elias became something the compact had no word for. Not an ambassador. Not an advisor. Simply a human who listened, spoke honestly, and treated alien presence as something to appreciate rather than analyze. Valeth continued her work, but her role subtly shifted as well. She laughed more, paused less, allowed her filaments to glow freely in shared spaces. They did not define their connection with labels. They did not need to. Sometimes they stood together at the viewport, watching Khepri's storms roll beneath them. Sometimes they spoke of history. Sometimes of nothing at all. Once, much later, Elias said, "Do you ever regret reacting the way you did that day?" Valeth considered this. "No," she said, "because shock is only fear encountering truth too quickly." She turned to him. "And you spoke truth without armor." Elias smiled. "So did you." Across the station, across species and systems, the story endured. not as legend, but as lesson. That sometimes the bravest act is not conquest or resistance. Sometimes it is simply seeing someone and saying, "So,